Ready. Play.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time it is in the world, wherever you are tuning in from. We are here about 24 hours ahead of the Jannik Sinner Carlos Alcaraz match. It is due to start at 3 p.m. local time tomorrow. That's 8 o'clock in the UK and 9 o'clock across most of Europe. Damien, does that make any difference, the timing of the match? I mean, sometimes we look at it. Well, I remember Nadal, Djokovic especially, we used to look at times and stuff like that, but I don't think it'll have much bearing on this encounter, right?
At this point, probably not. I mean, back in the day, I mean, like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe even a year ago, Jannik's fitness was way more questionable than it is right now. I think especially for Carlos, it's been very clear this week that like whenever he's facing anybody in the day session, they look like they are struggling, and he's just living his best life. He just doesn't care at all. I think Alcaraz is still fitter, but I doubt it will be like a massive factor here, especially with a day off. And Jannik also looking just really good in day session conditions this week, so I don't think it makes a big difference here now.
I mean, by the way, just looking at Sinner, every time I saw who Sinner's next opponent was, I was like, oh, of course the Manny run was unbelievable, and hats off to him. But, I was looking at, okay, Galan round of 64, not a bad first match. Diallo, yeah, it can be a challenge, but probably not for Jannik. Manarino's sort of having a final flicker perhaps, but was never likely to beat Jannik, I don't think. And Felix was brushed aside for the loss of just 2 games. Maybe Mane was the one who posed most threat, but ultimately Jannik won that one also in straight sets. I don't know if you've got any thoughts.
I mean,
on it.
Diallo definitely, I think, posed the most threat. But yeah, I mean, of the 5 players, I never thought anybody was beating Sinner. That's just the reality of where Jannik is right now. On hard courts, he's on an incredible winning streak already, way over 20. Obviously, the last loss was to Carlos in Beijing last year, and that was also super tight, first set tiebreak. Yeah, I mean, we know that this was a pretty easy draw, but at the same time, if you throw in players like, I don't know, whoever, Alex de Minaur, Taylor Fritz, some of the best of the rest right now, we know that Sinner is doing the same. Like, he's also reaching the final, probably without dropping a set. So it's not a major like talking point. It's just what Sinner has been doing to almost anybody on the planet.
Yeah, indeed. What have you made of Carlos's journey? Again, as he does take the more scenic route. And yeah, it's probably scenic against players, yeah, probably like Rublev, you wouldn't necessarily, or Jamur as well, expect Carlos to have problems with. And yet both of those went 3 sets, and Rublev was particularly tight. I think he ended up losing on a double fault, didn't he, Andre? So yeah, he's obviously had a more interesting route to the final for sure.
Yeah, I mean, not struggling as much as maybe some would expect against Zverev is a big win.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
this
Zverev
year,
had some physical issues, didn't he?
yeah, we're getting all these Sinner Alcaraz finals this year finally. And I think what we have seen is that basically in every single one of these tournaments, this pattern is the same. It's just how their games work. It's how their mental side especially works, and kind of like their temperaments. So we do expect it by now. I don't think at any point it has really like impacted Carlos's ability to win the final. I don't think, he lost the Wimbledon final because he had a tougher route. He definitely had a tougher route at the French, of course, when Sinner was setless and Carlos was struggling a lot. So I don't think it's really any problem for him. But, the only way it can become an issue is if he's losing some of these matches. But I think with kind of like the expectations for Carlos going into this event, you think that he is going to have 1 or 2 matches where he's struggling along the way, where he has to battle through. He did it, probably avoiding, let's say, solving the issues that he put himself into against Jumhur or Rublev. But yeah, getting that semi done pretty quickly, I think that's a big win for him. Injury, I mean, it only really comes into play in the second set. Nonetheless, he was pretty comfortably ahead by that point. So yeah, I mean, I think that especially getting this one done just makes it pretty clear that fatigue or anything like that won't be a factor. And yeah, to me, the only way it really impacts Carlos in the tournaments is because, well, he can lose, and Jannik kind of can't along the way.
Yeah. The head-to-head, I think, is very interesting because of the way it's evolved. Carlos probably in terms of reaching the elite of the sport, winning his first Grand Slam, getting to world number one, was a little bit ahead of Jannik on the curve. We'd seen Jannik on the tour possibly a year or two longer, and yet it took him a little bit longer to get to his peak, so to speak. And when they came up against each other, Carlos could be ranked 1, 2, or 3 in the world, Jannik a few spots further down. And it would be Jannik raising his game and posing Carlos. It was almost a 50-50 at that point. Then it sort of flipped a bit, and Jannik was, the one to be shot at. But whenever Carlos played, he would raise his game. Right now, I feel as though we've got another momentum shift. Weirdly enough, although that is 8-5, 8-5, 9-5, of course, if you include the Challenger victory that Carlos had, I think, in 21. Was it, Damien? But anyway, now
No, 2019.
Oh,
Carlos
2019.
was 15 and Jannik was 17. Yeah.
Okay, but it does feel like there's a little bit of a shift since the Jannik suspension for 3 months. Comes back, first tournament, we get a final between these two who we've been waiting for so long, and really pushes Carlos super hard in the first set. Carlos wins it on a tiebreak with some really good serving from memory, and then pulls away from him in the second set. But perhaps given that Jannik hadn't played for 3 months, that was still a bit of a tick for him in terms of as a tournament. And then, of course, we had the French Open. And Jannik, well, we all know how close he was to winning that and won more points. There's certainly a good argument to say he was the better player over the 5 sets. And he's also kind of put that 5-set issue that we think he had probably 2 or 3 years ago to bed. And then he goes and wins Wimbledon in relative comfort. He was the better player for most of the match. A little lapse in the first set cost him, but ultimately then was just the better player above Carlos. And Carlos, if you remember in that match, Damien, was sort of struggling for answers. I think he was sort of talking to himself in his box, not really knowing how to solve the problems that Jannik was posing.
Yeah, it was a bit of a return to their matches from the past. As you said, I mean, there was definitely a part of this rivalry when Alcaraz was perceived to be the better player, the better talent, the better prospect. And basically, it was like Jannik isn't doing as well as Alcaraz is against the other players on the tour. But in this particular matchup, it suddenly becomes a 50-50. And mostly it was just about playing like some insane first strike tennis, Carlos not being able to handle it, especially in his forehand corner. And yeah, I mean, at Wimbledon, we just returned to these patterns. Of course, a lot was also said about how, Alcaraz won 5 matches or 4 matches in a row. 5 matches in a row? 5 matches in a row against Jannik.
Mm-hmm.
And that was mostly because they played in conditions that were, just a little more suitable for him, just slower, basically. Even Beijing was like medium fastish, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't rapid anyway.
No.
I know, I mean, I'm not one of these people because I read opinions like that and I think they're just absolutely like so ignorant. After Roland Garros, where it was like, okay, so Jannik can only beat Carlos in quick conditions, definitely, because he didn't beat him here. I mean, he was centimeters away from winning that. He has 3 consecutive match points. Come on, he basically beat him. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that we finally got a match between them in conditions that were maybe a little more supportive for that first strike tennis, for how Jannik played, especially in sets 2 and 3, when that in attack percentage was so high. And basically, first forehand, and then Carlos doesn't have time to recover. So, you'd think that Cincinnati is also a little bit better for Jannik in that regard. And I think it's been a case of for the last few matches between them, really. Because between them, I suppose never, like literally until they retire, I don't think it's ever going to be, a clear favorite in any match, really, unless somebody's career just doesn't go the way we think it might. But it's always been like that for the last few matches, that you've got that 51-49, but you're kind of very clear on who that 51 guy is. And it's also the same here for me.
We're clear, aren't we, on the 51 guy? In fact, I might go a bit stronger than 51, but we're clear on who the favorite is, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to answer Sinner. Like, if somebody tells you that Alcaraz is the favorite, no, I mean, to me, that's just wrong. But I know that this difference, this gap is minimal. And, I would not be surprised whatsoever if Alcaraz won even in straights. But yeah, we've seen that at Wimbledon, Cincinnati conditions, even the new courts. At first, people said that maybe they were a little slower. I don't think so. I mean, you see all those men's matches, especially like Rublev Alcaraz, for example, where you've got no rallies over 9 shots whatsoever. And yeah, it's going to be pretty difficult for Alcaraz to handle that velocity that Sinner plays with.
Do we think that if they were to meet in New York, say in the final, of course, I think that'd be probably the only place they can meet. We would just, if it's 51-49 now, it still might be 51-49, but there'd be a little bit more understanding to go with. If somebody says, I think Alcaraz is winning because of X, Y, and Z, I just think 5 sets. He's won in New York before. Okay, so was Jannik, but just maybe is New York a little slower than Cincy, or have I got that wrong?
We'll see. I mean, it might be different, honestly, by the year, by the weather. Cincinnati new courts as well. I think it's at least comparable at the moment. Yeah, I mean, 5 sets is probably still slightly favoring Alcaraz, but this is a matchup of slim margins, as we were just talking about it. I think that this final will also tell us something, at least in terms of how the New York match will go. I remember when they played in Rome, and some people were trying to argue that the one who loses in Rome will actually have a better chance of winning at Roland Garros because there's going to be that like vengeance aspect. I mean, these things are just so tough to gauge and estimate. It really depends on very individual like cases and how it might work out for someone's psyche. So yeah, I mean, to me, I think we'll just kind of learn quite a lot about how a potential US Open clash could work tomorrow. And whatever happens, really, I think we're still going to think that a final between them in New York is pretty possible. But just like we mentioned earlier, we're gonna think that Carlos probably will take a bit more of a cynic route, maybe lose along the way. Jannik,
Yeah,
I really don't know how he's losing. So
right.
basically, yeah, I think that it will not change all that much. But let's say Alcaraz wins in Cincinnati, shows something unexpected in the matchup, handles that first strike tennis from Jannik a bit better than at Wimbledon. And then maybe at the US Open, we're talking about 51-49 the other way.
After the Roland Garros, Beijing, and to a lesser extent Rome wins that you can see on the shed on the screen right now, I thought, yeah, okay, Alcaraz has got something going right now and may end up, not necessarily dominating the rivalry for the next few years, but win 2 out of 3, or let's say on the occasion. However, these last 3, and so I'm going to include the Rome one as well, so it's a bit of a weird one. I think these last 3 matches as a collective, I have no idea how many points they won as a collective, but I do feel as though these last 3 matches, despite 2 of them going the way of Carlos, have actually just feels like a bit of a shift towards Jannik. Then you throw in the fact that he's just winning in straight sets and he's a machine and plays with just a little bit more margin and perhaps as a result has a bit more of a comfortable run. Yeah, for me, it leads to a Jannik win tomorrow. Maybe as well the first straight sets win for Jannik for quite a while, I guess. When was has he even ever won in straight sets? What's that Beijing one? I think the Beijing one, in 23. So could be his first straight sets win over Carlos in almost 2 years.
Could be. I mean, Rome, I wouldn't really add to Roland Garros and Wimbledon. Like, yeah, I know there were a lot of extra factors.
He did okay in Rome, which was considering he hadn't played for 3 months.
Yeah, but that doesn't signal a shift, I can't give him credit for something that like didn't happen.
Okay.
I don't think we can really start the shift there. But yeah, I mean, obviously he could have won Roland Garros and was super close to him winning all slams so far this season. So
I know.
could have been even more incredible. Yeah, even in 2024, of course, when Alcaraz was 3-0, well, there was also the Six Kings Slam, but I'm not taking that into consideration. But when he was 3-0 against Jannik, I mean, he won all of these matches from a set down. And all of these matches included patches. Well, actually, Beijing maybe not as much, but especially Indian Wells and Roland Garros in 2024, they included patches where for like 40 minutes, he looks like, I don't know, he's a child, and Jannik is just blowing him off the court. We haven't really seen it this year, to be fair, really, maybe not even at Wimbledon. But yeah, last year he was also like forced to fight for these wins and only really got there with like problem solving and the wider set of options that he has compared to Jannik just being so good shot for shot. So yeah, I mean, it never really felt like Alcaraz was dominant in this rivalry, but when it was 9-4, I mean, that was pretty unreal considering how it all started and how they never really were able to, get away from one another. But who knows? I mean, now it could be 9-6. Obviously, we also have courts coming up this season that typically would favor Jannik. I don't know. Let's say they meet at the ATP finals, and again,
Mm.
that's shifted towards him. So it's kind of all about how much they meet. Last year Carlos avoided him on courts that he didn't enjoy. He like literally lost earlier, and now it's a little different.
Yeah, indeed. Well, lot to look forward to. I hope it's a classic that Carlos has already been in one Cincinnati final classic 2 years ago against Novak, and of course he's been in many classics with Jannik. This might be a bit more like Wimbledon in that, yeah, there's some highlight reels, of course, particularly from Carlos, but ultimately Jannik just has a little bit too much. I know you've got plenty of content coming, Damien, or have had content coming and content still to come, especially regarding qualifiers, both on your Twitter feed, but I guess you've got a podcast as well on the qualifiers.
Yeah, I will be recording actually pretty soon my picks for the Challenger podcast, but also tomorrow I have a stream about the qualifying. So obviously a lot as usual, 6 Challengers as well this week. So yeah, it was a busy time for sure. Just 3 coming up along with the qualies. I will say one thing though, that will kind of make me look stupid when this episode goes out, because presently at the time of recording, the women's final is not yet set, right? So we can't really do a preview of it. But I want to do a preview of it in one sentence. Iga Świątek is winning it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's cool.
I don't care who she plays. She's winning it.
Yeah, that's cool. I might even just chop this into a women's final preview.
Today we're going to be previewing the Cincinnati men's final between Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz. It's going to be their 14th meeting. Alcaraz leads the head-to-head 8-5, and this is going to be their 4th meeting this year. All 3 have come in finals. Alcaraz won 2 of them, with Sinner winning the most recent one in Wimbledon. And I think it's interesting, this match, especially because Cincinnati, they both took time off, so they're feeling a lot more, fresh than the rest of the field. But regardless, I think I want to look at some of their runs. Alcaraz getting here, it hasn't been super convincing to me. Dropped a set in round 1 to Zumir, dropped a set to Rublev, was down a break in the second set to Nardi, and his patches of play have varied. But he has gotten through, and that's kind of the Alcaraz MO at this point. Whereas on the other side, Sinner, he's won straight sets every match. He has played a few breakers, Diallo, Manarino, and Atman. He's come through. But when I think about this matchup, I think about the conditions, and for Sinner, a hard court, he just has to have the edge for me on all hard courts, regardless of if they're slow or quick. But in Cincinnati, super fast, and I think that's going to help Sinner out, whereas Alcaraz, I think the quicker surfaces are his worst surfaces. So I think the edge goes to Sinner there, and I think Sinner's ability to serve out of trouble, clutch it out in the big moments, I think that's such a difference maker for him. And Alcaraz, I just don't think he's going to have high enough patches of play for long periods of time to stay with Sinner on this quick a surface, and he needs to start quick and stay close to Sinner, because I just think the consistency on that side is going to be just a bit much for Alcaraz to deal with. But talk about finals, like I said, they've both done it now, and Carlos does have that clutch factor. So I think the footwork's going to be really important, because Sinner just hits such a heavy ball, gets through the surface really well, and I think that's going to be the difference. So for me, just a slight edge to Sinner here. I do think he comes through, probably in straight sets, maybe 3, but we'll see.
Right, cool. This is done. Thanks very much. And everybody else, you know the drill. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.